And now it's time for me to introduce a very well-known and a very sought-after face on the Mumbai circuit. It is the very, very affable and the very effervescent Mr. Devendra Prabhudesai. He's a multi-dimensional cricket personality who wears so many hats. He's an eminent cricket writer and historian. To his credit, he's the author of 9 cricket books, including biographies of Sunil Gavaskar, Sachin Tendulkar, and Rahul Dravid. He's written 2 books on Sachin, Hero Biography 2017 and Winning Like Sachin, Think and Succeed Like Tendulkar 2018. He also is an ace anchor. He's got the distinction of being the former manager, media relations and corporate affairs, BCCI. To his credit, he's designed the first cricket heritage walk. It's going to be an absolute honor and privilege to be listening to this man for the next 10 minutes. Here's inviting Vijay Merchant sir's daughter and grandson to please come up on stage to my left side. A warm welcome.
Namaskar, good evening everybody. It feels great to be addressing this gathering and to sit alongside some veteran stalwarts. In fact, a couple of whom I have even had the fortune of working with, Mr. Kedar Gupte and Mr. Anil Joshi. We were in the BCCI together for a while, and it's great to be back. Feels like it's, I'm at some kind of a reunion. There's nothing much that you can say about this phenomenon. There are a few things. I was lucky to get the opportunity to write a couple of books on him and to interact with him. So I will focus on my personal interactions with him and also what I have seen over the last few decades. When it comes to Sachin Tendulkar, I think the first time as a schoolboy I heard about him was in the mid-80s, because as we know, the Mumbai media always covers junior cricket very generously. A lot of newsprint is dedicated to junior cricket, schools cricket. And that is how those of us who are in Mumbai, obviously all the seniors would have known about him. But even a schoolboy like me had first heard of Sachin sometime in 85, 86, thanks to newspapers like the Times of India and others who would give a lot of coverage to junior level cricket. And the general sense that one got being a boy who was passionate about the game was that it's only a matter of time before he makes it to the big league. Of course, we did not expect that it would be so early. At the age of 16 he would go on to play for India, but it was almost like it's a matter of time. He became a household name all over the country, of course, with that epic partnership of 664 with Vinod Kambli in that inter-school Harris Shield semi-final in February 1988. But I think Mumbaikars like us, we knew about him, we had heard about him, and we knew what is going to happen very soon. Just to digress a bit, one quiz question I would like to ask. In that Harris Shield semi-final, out of the 22 players who figured in that match, there were 3 who went on to play for India. The first 2, of course, we know. But can anybody tell me who was the third cricketer? Ajit. Who said Sairaj? Sairaj Bahutule, captain of St. Xavier's, who were at the receiving end of the Shardashram onslaught. And Sairaj learned a lot of things about man management on the job, because a couple of his bowlers broke down, refused to bowl. They could not take that punishment. And Sairaj had a tough job basically goading them to bowl. So Sairaj picked up a lot of man management techniques that day as a schoolboy, which I'm sure are standing him in good stead today when he's a coach himself. I belong to the last generation to have witnessed and to vividly remember the entirety of Sachin Tendulkar's career, from international career, from 1989 to 2013. I know many of you would have also seen it, but I think I belong to the last generation, and that is why I consider myself very lucky. I was 13 years old when he made his debut for India, and I was 37 when he played his last test for India. So in a way, we grew up together. I had my heroes as a kid: Sunil Gavaskar, Kapil Dev, Dilip Vengsarkar, overseas Vivian Richards, Alan Border. But Sachin Tendulkar was a unique thing, because I was his fan from the time not only I was a schoolboy, but he himself was a schoolboy. So that made Sachin very unique. You felt quite possessive about him because, after all, there are just a couple of years that separate us. So you felt, he's my generation. So that feeling was very strong with Sachin. And over the years from 1989 to 2013, there were some great memories. Of course, all of us, we have seen him at his best on television. We were fortunate that Sachin's career coincided with the television age and later the digital age as well. So all his great innings we have watched either on the television or in person. One particular innings that will always be special to me, because I watched it live, was an innings of 85 that he scored against the West Indies at Wankhede in 1994. That was the first test match that I watched. I was there for the first 4 days, watched every ball. And I will never forget that innings because it was played in a crisis situation. The situation at the end of the second day's play was that India led by 29 runs, but in the second innings, which began late on the second day, we were 11 for 3. Prabhakar, Nayan Mongia and Vinod Kambli to an absolute brute of a ball from, I think it was Cameroon Kafi. 3 batsmen back in the pavilion, 11 for 3, just 40 runs ahead, anybody's game. And the next morning, there was a delayed start to the day's play because there were some damp patches on the wicket. And we were all like tense, like what is going to happen? And then the counter attack that this man staged, it was unbelievable, the shots that he played. That is one innings that will always remain special for me because watched it live. Years later, I was also one of those who watched his only IPL century from literally within the boundary line because I was in the BCCI at that point of time and I was doing a little bit of work for the official broadcaster. So I was literally standing beyond the hoardings, but of course, between the boundary rope and the hoardings when he scored that century against Kochi Tuskers Kerala in the 2011 IPL, another special moment for me. As I said, I was lucky to get the opportunity to interact a lot with him, work with him. When I was in the BCCI, luckily for me, there were 2 anniversaries that were celebrated. In 2008, the BCCI celebrated the 75th anniversary of the first test match on Indian soil, which was played in December 33, Bombay Gymkhana, we all know that, Lala Amarnath century. And the board compiled a volume which had articles by all the living test captains of the time. And that is when I got to work with Sachin on his article. A year later, the board celebrated the 75th anniversary of the Ranji Trophy. So again, I got to interact with him. I was the master of ceremonies at several BCCI awards functions where he was felicitated either for being the cricketer of the year or for completing 20 years in international cricket. And it was a great honor when he agreed to be interviewed by me for the books that I wrote first on Rahul Dravid and then on Mr. Gavaskar. And I remember those interactions with him. He answered all my questions, spoke very fluently, eloquently, gave me a lot of great stories pertaining to both Rahul Dravid and Mr. Gavaskar. And after the Gavaskar book came out in 2009, I was like itching for, to complete a trilogy because I said it makes sense. You've first written on Rahul, then Sunil Gavaskar. It only makes sense to complete a trilogy by writing a book on the third Indian to score over 10,000 runs in tests. And I remember talking to my publishers, Rupa, and what we agreed on is let's wait because this was 2010-11, so we felt that it's only a matter of time before he calls it a day. So we decided to wait on. And as soon as he retired, I received the contract and I started working on the book. For the Sachin biography, it was a challenge. The main challenge that I had was that there was very little on Sachin that was not in the public domain already. So what can you do? I mean, what do you write? For both the Rahul Dravid book and the Gavaskar book, I had interviewed a lot of people, their teammates, their neighbors, you name it, opponents. But I thought that when it comes to Sachin, there is absolutely no point, interviewing, say, Rahul Dravid about him or Saurav Ganguly about him or even VVS Laxman about him, because everything that they had to say about Sachin, they have already said. So what do? Then I decided on something different. I said I will devote more time to researching facts, and I will also interact with people who have had a long association with Sachin, but whose association has not been talked about and documented. And again, it's a great coincidence today that of the few people that I interviewed for that book on Sachin, 2 are present in this room today. One is sitting here right next to me, Mr. Anil Joshi, and the other is the organizer, Mr. Marcus Couto. So I had a great interaction with them, and I'll just recount a couple of stories, one narrated by Marcus, one narrated by Anil sir. So the story is from the school days. Sachin and Vinod, of course, the destroyers of bowling attacks. And they had this habit apparently of raiding the tiffin boxes of their teammates in the tent during the breaks. And it so happened that during a game, they came in for an interval and there were a couple of lunch boxes and they raided them. When they went out, they again had a great partnership. As they were coming back, one of their teammates came running to them and said to them, "Ki tumhala mahiti hai ka tumhi konacha dabba khalla?" And they were like, "Konacha khalla?" He said, "Tumche teacherचा khalla. Ata म्हणजे संपलं, म्हणजे you are in trouble, boss." But boys will be boys. Sachin and Vinod, the first thing they did is they came in. They went straight to that teacher. Teacher, काय तुम्ही भेंडीची भाजी, तुम्ही आम्हाला इतकी ती मस्त होती की आता त्याच्यामुळे आम्ही इतकी चांगली बॅटिंग केली, म्हणजे thank you very much. That lady was so overwhelmed that for all the subsequent matches she would get bhendichi bhaji for both of them. So that was, boys will be boys. And one incredible story that Anil sir told me, this is from Sachin's Sangrace Mafatlal days. He was already playing for India. But in the early 90s, there was a corporate tournament, the final of which was being played in Agra. And Sachin he was already an India player, but they had qualified for the final, so they asked him to come over if he was available to play the final. Now it so happened that Sachin had committed to playing in the benefit match of Mr. Sunil Walson. Sunil Walson, the former left-arm pace bowler, the answer to the most frequently asked question in cricket quizzes. We all know what that question is, the answer to which is Sunil Walson. Sunil Walson's benefit match was in this place called Silchar in Assam. In fact, it was not even in Silchar, it was on the outskirts of Silchar, I think about 20-30 kilometers away from Silchar. But it was all planned. Mr. Walson said that as soon as Sachin comes off the field, there's a car waiting for him, which will take him to the airport. Now the idea was that Sachin will go in, play a few big shots, and then come in. But then Sachin is Sachin. I mean, he's someone who takes batting very seriously, be it an official match or an exhibition match. So Sachin batted, scored a century in that benefit match, came off, immediately sat in the car, went to Silchar. From Silchar, he flew to Kolkata. From Kolkata, he took a plane for Delhi. And from Delhi, he drove to Agra late in the night. This is a time when the Yamuna Expressway and all that did not exist. You can see that man's commitment to play a corporate tournament when he's already an India player. He reached Agra late in the night. Everybody was waiting for him for dinner. The match the next day, it was a 40-over game which was to start at 7 a.m. because Agra in the months of April, May, you can imagine, the idea was to start early and finish early. So 40 overs match. And then as it turned out, Sangrace Mafatlal fielded first, which meant that Sachin was on the field throughout. Then, of course, they were chasing a total and the situation got a little tense. And there was one stage where Sangrace Mafatlal needed about 80 runs to win in the last 8 overs. Now, in this era of Travis Head and Marcus Stoinis, that is a walk in the park. 80 in 8, no big deal. But in the early 90s, it wasn't like that. It was very much a big deal. And Anil sir told me that he went onto the field with some water for 2 players who knew a thing or two about batting. One of them was Sandeep Patil and the other was Sachin Tendulkar, Shivaji Park boys both. And Sandeep Patil took a swig of the water and just looked at Sachin and said, "Tendlya, ata suruat karuya." That's all that he said. And Tendlya also nodded, "Acha, haan, theek hai, suruat karuya." Sangrace Mafatlal finished that match with 3 overs to spare. In 5 overs, they hit those 80 runs. Sandeep Patil and Sachin Tendulkar. So that was the end of it. Another thing that I did in this book that I wrote, is I tried very hard to dispel certain misconceptions that people have about Sachin. In this age of social digital media, people don't want to think too much, they don't want to do too much research, and so certain assumptions are made which I have tried to dispel. One assumption that I tried to dispel is, it is not that Sachin was here today with that 664 partnership and in the Indian team tomorrow. It didn't work like that. In fact, Sachin Tendulkar played one full season of the Ranji Trophy, 88-89, in which he was Mumbai's highest run scorer. 583 runs from 7 matches at an average of 64, which basically means that he was eligible to go on that Pakistan tour on merit and not because he was a boy wonder, are 16 years ka bacha hai, bahut talent, nothing. He was actually eligible on merit because Mumbai's highest run scorer, Mumbai qualified for the semi-finals in 88-89. So it is not that it was a steady climb to the top that Sachin Tendulkar made. Another misconception, which I call it a misconception, which I tried very hard to sort of dispel in the book, and this is something I feel very strongly about, and in fact Gadiyar sir also made this point in his address. It is very easy for people to label Sachin Tendulkar as a poor captain or a defensive captain, and this is something that always irritates me. My simple response to these people is, you look at the state of Indian cricket in the late 90s. I don't really think I need to go into the gory details, but look at the state of Indian cricket and look at the quality of the opposition that Sachin had to lead India in. Against South Africa, that team of the late 90s, you go into a series in South Africa, play at Durban on a bouncy track. A week after playing on a dusty pitch in Kanpur, no preparation time, nothing. Then you go on to play the West Indies in the West Indies. Brian Lara, Curtly Ambrose, Courtney Walsh, Franklin Rose. I mean, it's another story that we should have won in the West Indies. We could not score 120 to win. But how can the captain be blamed? And most importantly, what can the captain of a team do when 3 or 4 of his players have other priorities in life? You all know what I'm referring to. I think many of us will remember December 1997, there was a quadrangular series in Sharjah. India, Pakistan, England, West Indies. Sachin was the captain. We lost to England and Pakistan, and the last game against the West Indies was a must-win game for us. The West Indies batted first. It was a gettable target. But when we started batting, one particular member, and I'm sure many of you will know whom I'm referring to, he kept advancing down the pitch and kept sending, his partner kept sending him back, almost as if this man was determined to get run out. And it became, it was so hilarious, unintentionally hilarious, that to people like me watching on television, it was like, "Arey, itna obvious to mat kar yaar. Matlab, we know what you're trying to do, but at least act, yaar. I mean, don't try to make it so obvious." And finally, as they say, try and try till you succeed, that player was finally run out. Sachin lost the captaincy. He was brought back as captain in 1999 when he did not want the job. He decided, okay, they have given me the job, I'll do my best. But who do we play? We play a team that is on the way to creating a world record of 16 wins in a row. And then we play against South Africa. So when people talk about Sachin being a poor captain, it is important to take all these things into account, that look at the quality of the opposition, look at the players he was given. Most of the times he never got the team he wanted. And most importantly, 3 or 4 members of his side had other priorities in life. But there is one particular quote that I used in the book, and I will read it out for you, made by someone who knows a thing or two about captaincy. I quote, "When I state that my favorite captain is Sachin Tendulkar, people always seem to have a questioning look. Because if you look at the numbers, perhaps his stint as captain was not the most successful. But believe me, he was a very good captain indeed. He gave the freedom to newcomers, which is required to blossom as a player. He had a young team when he became captain. Rahul, Laxman, Srinath, Kumble, myself, we were all in the maturing stage, and so we could not deliver the way the captain wanted us to. But Sachin, as a captain, definitely defined my international career. He brought me up the order in ODIs. It was the turning point of my life as a cricketer." So said Saurav Chandidas Ganguly. So I referred to the players having other priorities, and of course in 2000 we all know everything came crashing down. And this brings me to what happened in the latter half of 2000. The CBI conducted an inquiry. The government told the CBI to investigate, and a lot of people were interrogated, grilled, and the CBI prepared a report. The CBI's report on match fixing and related malpractices, which is available in the public domain. If you really want to, you should, cricket lovers should go through that report, because there's a lot of black comedy. You feel sad, but there are other points where you also feel like laughing, you know. So please check that report out. It is very much there in the public domain. And this particular CBI report for me is a landmark of sorts, because it features what, in my humble opinion, is the greatest tribute ever paid to any sports person at any point of time. And once again, I quote, there was a bookie who was interrogated by the CBI, and the bookie had this to say, which is again on record in that report. So I quote, "In fact, in most of the matches where fixing was taking place, the clue was that the game would be on, that is, the fixing would be on, only after Tendulkar got out, because he was one player who could single-handedly win the match and upset any calculation." The greatest, I mean, Bradman said that he reminds me of myself and Matthew Hayden. I've seen God and he bats at number 4 for India. We keep getting those WhatsApp messages every now and then. But I think, in my humble view, this is the greatest tribute, with all due respects to these legends, the greatest tribute that can ever be paid to a sports person. That not only were his opponents scared of him, but even bookies were, intimidated by him. And that, in fact, is the greatest contribution, I would say, of Sachin Tendulkar and all his contemporaries. They have all scored lots of runs for India, won many matches for India, taken a lot of wickets, Sachin, Saurav, Rahul, Anil. But I think the greatest contribution will always be the fact that when Indian cricket had lost its credibility, we were basically down and out, these guys displayed exemplary leadership, and they steered us out of that dark hole and brought the smiles back on Indian faces. You only have to look across the wall, across the border, to know what I'm talking about, and the leadership displayed by our icons in that dark phase. I will just end my address with one, again, a personal anecdote. This was during the launch of Hero, my biography of Sachin's. It was organized at the C.K. Naidu Hall of the CCI, and the function was at 4 o'clock. Sachin came in a little earlier, so we had organized a room for him at the CCI. When everything was ready, Vinod Rai, who was then heading the COA that was running the BCCI, he was the chief guest. So when Vinod Rai arrived, everything was in order. I went to Sachin's room to bring him to this function. And we walked down the corridor of the CCI towards the C.K. Naidu Hall. And by force of habit, having been the media manager of the BCCI, Sachin was walking ahead, I was walking behind. And just as I think we are all familiar with the topography of the C.K. Naidu Hall. Just as we were about to enter the C.K. Naidu Hall, the door was open, and all the people were looking behind, waiting for the Bharat Ratna to enter, ready to start clapping. Sachin suddenly stopped. So I also stopped. And then he turned around and he, tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Devendra, this is your launch. You lead, I will follow you." I think that just says it all. So happy birthday, Sachin, and may you go on to complete a century in real life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Devendra Prabhudesai. The way you really portrayed Sachin's grit and determination journey to the success that he's had, that was really incredible. And we're always going to be troubling you for such insights. So be ready for all those troubles that we keep giving you. Big thank you, and here's wishing all the very best.